good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Here we have Vishnu, Head of Product, Gilbert, our Head of Solutions Engineering and Customer Success, and Derek, a Lead Solution Architect, today to talk about a very exciting topic about Jenkins plugins, whether you love them or hate them. We would love to know how you use them and what your issues are, and some best practices. Would love to hear from you as well. So make this as engaging as possible. All right, let's get started. Once again, thank you for joining today's DevOps Huddle on Jenkins plugins. Like I mentioned, Gilbert, Vishnu, and Derek are here to talk about some issues and some best practices, and would love to hear from you as well. Gilbert, take it away.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for joining today, and I hope you stay cool today. At least in my area, it's going to be at about 100 degrees. Today, I want to talk to you a little bit about Jenkins plugins. Love it or hate it. We really want to know if you hate them or if you love them, or maybe you're in the middle. But I'm currently heading up customer success and solutions engineering here. But previous to this, had a lot of experience with security. So I was a practitioner heading up product security, as well as heading up DevOps and SRE operations teams across multiple companies.
Yeah, thanks, Gilbert. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. This is Vishnu Vasudevan at the product here with Opsera. Been in this industry, DevOps industry, for quite some time, like 13 plus years, building private cloud and DevOps practices for enterprises. And I've been working on this product like Opsera since we started, and happy to be here and discuss about the Jenkins plugins, like how it's like helping the team and how it's been challenging for customers moving towards the microservice-based architecture and multi-cloud architecture. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Derek Ross. I'm the lead solutions architect here at Opsera. My background is I've been a DevOps engineer, a product owner, some large enterprises for release engineering processes, solutions engineer in the DevOps space. I've been in DevOps for about 10 years. I look forward to talking to all of you about Jenkins plugins.
All right, so this is an image. I don't know if you guys get frustrated with Jenkins of like, why is it working? Why is it not working? Or maybe, if you've used Jenkins for a long time, back in the days, you used to have to deploy one Jenkins server for job, or you have to deploy, a Jenkins server for Linux and Windows. And it was super frustrating before even containers, before maybe even, Amazon was here, right? So yeah, so it's just super, super frustrating sometimes working with Jenkins. There's benefits to it as well. I'm not just calling out the bad, or the ugly, but there is definitely some pain points with Jenkins, on scaling, on maintenance, and we're gonna go through those a little bit here. Vishnu, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, the biggest reason why I feel Jenkins has become a pain, Gilbert, and so folks like correct me if I'm wrong. In 2000, like when market moved towards the service oriented architecture, right? Like it was all about microkernels, and like Jenkins was very helpful, and like you don't have to have multiple dependencies within integrating to different tools. But like when the market moved towards the multi-cloud microservice-based architecture, that's where the problem came in, because Jenkins was not able to scale with multiple plugins that came in, and that was built by like many people, right? It's an open source community. The best part is like a lot of people started giving inputs in terms of building new plugins, but like over the time, what happened is there was so many plugins that was left orphaned, and people who are using those plugins, it became a huge challenge because they were not able to scale their Jenkins to the next gen like architecture, whatever they are targeting for. That's where most problem came in, and also with multi-cloud, the scaling aspect also, right? Like because every application in an enterprise or any company would need a pipeline, but if you try to execute multiple pipelines at the same time, you run into scaling issues, you run into plugin issues, and you run into the vulnerabilities which can cause your application into security risk, running your application in Jenkins, especially the pipelines.
All right, let's kick it off with a poll here to see how many plugins folks here use. We'll give a few seconds here for everybody to answer. All right, let's see the results.
Wow, 16 to 25 and 25 plus.
Okay.
Wow, that's a lot of plugins. It's pretty cool. All right, well, let's jump into it a little bit. All right, so let's talk about I'll call it principles or just DevOps principles. We want to look at if you look at Amazon's principles from a cloud perspective, they had 5 last year, now they have 6. But in DevOps in general, right, we want to look at resiliency and availability. So making sure that I call it manufacturing code, right? When you build code, you manufacture the code because you're putting it through a manufacturing process. and then you're making sure that that manufacturing line is always resilient and available, right? So having 1,000+ plugins, in the marketplace, to update and modify and delete plugins can be challenging, right? From resiliency and availability, especially when you're trying to patch either the Jenkins system or you're trying to patch a plugin and update a plugin. Now you have, in the open source community, right? We have some sort of, I don't remember if we do have fully managed. I don't think so. I think that's a paid version that's maintained by CloudBeast, but want to make sure that it's just, it could be an overhead nightmare. Being a practitioner in the past, I've seen how if you don't have a backup, you could be out, of building software or manufacturing code for a couple of days, right? So, Vishnu, Derek, you want to add to maybe speak a little bit about your orphan plugins that you talked about earlier?
Absolutely. I worked at T-Mobile on the centralized DevOps team, and our job was to provide centralized services for the entire company, and providing orchestration and control of plugins across the entire enterprise, having version control across all of those, and having vulnerability understanding of what was going on in each Jenkins was a huge nightmare and really hard to scale from a central perspective.
Yeah, I agree with Derek. Like enterprises who are using Jenkins do it yourself, yeah, they might have done a great job in terms of like building the pipelines, building the plugins, but like within 3 months, they will run into the issues, especially the plugins being upgraded. And if they are not able to like make their application work with the new plugin, that's a huge challenge because their entire software supply chain is impacted, right? Which will basically impact their business, which will impact the speed to market and also the ROI they are working on the application. So we had to be very, very careful in terms of like how the plugins are chosen and how frequently we are updating and like how agile we are in terms of managing the plugins and like managing the pipelines from a centralized location.
Yeah, and thank you, Vishnu and Derek, for your inputs here. The image down here that you see is an example of how Jenkins looks at warnings for plugins on Jenkins and then gives you the version, right? There's plugin and Jenkins compatibility as well that you have to manage in the enterprises. Now imagine in the enterprises, let's say Derek and T-Mobile, he's managing maybe a set of Jenkins masters or a set of Jenkins services. And now he has to manage that times, 20, right? How do you actually do that? So, I'll give you guys some tips in the next couple of slides where I manage open source Jenkins as well, across multiple, I'll call it multiple engineering teams with multiple types of products, different languages, by the way, too, have a lot to do with plugins, by the way. So we'll get into a little bit of that, and then we'll give you guys some tips on how we manage things in the past.
Awesome. Before that, we talked about updates. Let's see how often the folks here do their upgrades. So let me launch another poll here.
Monthly, quarterly. That makes quarterly makes sense. Monthly is.
So should we consider other as like more than 3 months, more than a quarter?
I would suggest, yeah, I would think so myself. Yeah, I mean, it could become very challenging, right?
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and move on. Thanks for the input. We'd love to hear more about your challenges with with upgrades for sure. All right, we'll talk a little bit about plugin anti-patterns. So if you look at the image on the right, we'll start with that, right? If you want to install Node.js and a specific version of Node.js, right, you have to let Jenkins know about that. Specifically, maybe, Derek, you can talk a little bit more about this, but when you call a job in Jenkins, I think, if memory serves me right, you have to know the exact name. Is that correct?
Yeah. So if you look at the picture that you have on the right side of the slide, you've got two different Node.js tools. And if you want to call Node.js 17.1, you have to match that string or those characters that are in the name field exactly. And there's no way, unless you're using the UI, if you're using pipeline as code, there's no way to kind of know what's available to you. No kind of drop down or a way to know that, yeah, I've got these 4 versions that have been approved by my centralized security team and they're ready for me to use.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that input and refresher. So again, I don't want to repeat myself here, but I'll do, maybe I'll point out a few of these. Maybe Vishnu, you can jump in here and point out, talk a little bit about these other points. But we really want to, I'll talk about maybe the slight DSL dependency on Groovy based languages when you're trying to build a pipeline. When you're building a pipeline in Groovy language or declarative language on your GitHub, right? You're definitely having to build in that program Groovy language into the pipeline with these plugins. And if these plugins change, there's a good or high chance that your pipeline may stop working because of complexity in the pipeline and the scripts, right? So we'll get into a little bit. I'll give you guys some recommendations in a little bit about maybe how to address this, or maybe Derek can do that. Vishnu, you want to jump in, and add more flavor?
Yeah, so the anti-patterns, if you look at it, like we are just talking about like one piece of the technology stack, which is Node.js, right? Like the Java-based application. Uh, I see in enterprise, people are using Jenkins for multiple use cases, not just for SDLC side of it, but also the Salesforce or the SAP, like other SaaS and COTS-based application. The complexity is more and more, especially at the enterprise level, because you can't basically build Groovy for every use case that is in the market. And the team is trying to build a centralized DevOps team with Jenkins. And it's basically a huge risk, because the reason why I'm saying that is, last year when SolarWinds happened, the entire SolarWinds episode that happened because of the Jenkins. Someone got into the Jenkins that they basically like introduced the malware, and they were not able to stop it, because that malware can go across every application, not just the SDLC, but also can SaaS or COTS or like infrastructure as a code. And when it comes to infrastructure, there's a huge set of dependencies, right? Like where you have to manage your Helm charts, the Terraform, the dependencies on the Terraform versions that you have. So Jenkins is good to be a good starting point as a CI tool, but when it comes to the CD part, when it comes to the governance, when it comes to the gates and thresholds, I think like that's where the challenge starts coming in. And it's very difficult for any application teams to basically like make sure that application is running in a seamless fashion when it comes to the software supply chain.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that a little bit too. Jenkins was made specifically for building software, and it didn't always take an account for the COTS applications, maybe like the Salesforce that Vishnu was talking about, or other COTS applications that are built in the market.
Yeah, while you pull up the next slide, we talked about duplication of efforts here. Just want to know how different teams use plugins. And if they share plugins versions. Let me launch a quick poll question on that.
Third option could be, do you know?
Yeah, that's a good question, right? Do you know what you have so we can protect it? We'll talk a little bit about security on that.
All right, let me share the results in a second here. All right. I'm not sure if everybody can see the results or just the panelists. So Gilbert, can you read out the numbers here? 57% said yes.
Yes, and then 43% said no. So it wasn't too bad. I thought it was going to be, way more skewed, to be honest. But cool. Well, let's talk about security risk. And thanks for taking the polls, guys. It really helps us understand your current situation, and hopefully this will help you guys maybe just gain some deeper insights. If not, reach out to us at any time. We're open for discussion and want to help out the community just based on our own experience. We may not, or we don't have all the answers, but we'll share with what we can. So vulnerability is
problem, Gilbert, like in the security area, right? Like since Jenkins is an open source group, and nobody can stop building the plugins, and like customers, they can download it as long as it is available. The real problem comes in is like what kind of security standards that like we are following for the Jenkins, right? Like either you have to follow NIST or some standards, and it's very difficult managing this like at the open source level. And because the DevOps team, they are not like basically plugged into the security team to understand like what are the security requirements that they need to bake in when they build the Jenkins. So that becomes a challenge the moment like they get exposed. It's always a reactive for security team and also the team that is managing the Jenkins, and there is no proactive measures in terms of managing the security and also building a robust software supply chain for the application teams.
Great. Yeah. So again, I want to just point out that, make sure your Jenkins is at least secure from the outside world. I can tell you right now that, there's a NCC group, which is a very, popular and company out there that works with a lot of us out there, for a lot of these discovery security flaws, as well as like SOC 2 type 2 type of approaches, and also kind of like red teaming. But they found over 100 Jenkins plugins had flaws, right? So just be aware of your security, out there from a Jenkins point of view. And I think number one thing that I think bad actors will get at is secrets displayed in console output. I'll give you guys a quick tip here. If you guys know who Shodan is, if you don't, go just do some research out there, and it's pretty interesting what you can find. You can find many Jenkins systems out there with port 80 open to the world, that you can easily log into without passwords, and you can actually just crawl the internet with looking at the console output. And if you get lucky, you might get a token, you might get a secret there. And
forget about the token, right? Like the moment you have access to the Jenkins, that means they have access to your source code management. They have access to your secret sauce, the company secret. So that puts your entire company in jeopardy.
Yeah, so just be careful, right? Quick output, secrets. Don't turn off 80 if you can, and 80, and just those small little things will help you.
Yeah, and like if you have any questions, if you have any issues that you're running into, like we are happy to help you and like give some guidance as well around like how you have to manage your do-it-yourself Jenkins.
All right, last poll, guys.
Yeah, I like that answer. Duh, of course I would. Yeah, right.
Of course.
I think it's just, plugins are the thing that was always available, and there wasn't something that wasn't, was an alternative, I'll call it. So of course you're going to use, plugins, but now I think with the maturity of DevOps and so many, capabilities out there now.
Want to read out the results?
Yeah, duh, of course, is the winner, right? 71%, and 14% said maybe, and 14 are just curious for now. So that's good. We have a good response.
So this is going to be a very short, high-level demo, but I want to cover the major benefits that we provide as you're covering your Jenkins deployments. So the first thing I want to cover is deploying Jenkins. If we need to deploy a Jenkins, if we want to have it managed by Opsera, we can easily deploy it. And as a DevOps engineer, one of my first jobs I ever did was deploy a Jenkins. I had to learn how to administrate it, learn how to lock it down, learn how to secure it. I know definitely there were people who were doing that and not locking it down, did not go through the effort to really understand deeply what the configurations were. So if I want to deploy Jenkins with Opsera, all I need to do is check a box, click deploy tool selection. It will automatically register it in my tool registry, and I can get going on a secure instance of Jenkins that has all the dependencies I need. You can see that Jenkins here. Here's my solutions engineer Jenkins, along with all the other tools that I need to use as part of my pipeline. One of the things we talked about with security was secrets. So we have a HashiCorp Vault integration directly with your Jenkins the second that it's deployed. So you can start storing secrets and parameters that you can use inside your jobs off the bat without any other type of configuration. You can create all your jobs right here with Opsera. And once you create a new job, you'll be able to use this in any of your pipelines. Another big part of this is visibility. We asked the question, do you know what versions, who's using your Jenkins? So our usage tab with your Jenkins registration allows you to see what pipelines are using it, and then you can go straight to the pipelines and understand what's being delivered and manufactured inside your organization. And I really like that analogy that was used by Gilbert as manufacturing. I come from Chicago, and one of my first jobs was at GE Aviation So I'm very heavy manufacturing, and they're always improving manufacturing processes. So as new tools are available, we should definitely be bringing them in so we can be more secure, more safe, and more auditable.
Yeah, the best part about the Opsera is like you have multiple environment variables for different applications. You don't have to expose that within the pipeline or in the Groovy script. And we have a tool registry concept where you can basically store any variables within the vault, which basically give you a threat vulnerability management, shift left approach, right? Like where the users or the applications developer doesn't have to know about all these secrets or tokens or passwords or any sort of like sensitive variables that needs to be executed part of the pipeline.
Thanks, Vishnu. I'm going to show you two pipelines. Oh, it looks like we have a little guest too. I'm going to show you two pipelines. One pipeline is going to be Terraform, and this is an example of how you can replace the use of a plugin. So here I'm running a Terraform script. Here's the workflow. There's no code. I can do everything through a card-based configuration. And if I wanted to use AWS IAM credentials in Jenkins, I would have to go get the Jenkins IAM credential plugin. With us, you just register your IAM credentials in the tool registry, and then we manage that for you. So you can pull in your AWS credentials. If you're deploying to Azure, you could pull in your Azure credentials. And all of that is maintained by a very security conscious development team at Opsera. From a tool management standpoint, one of the slides that was shown was setting up Node.js as a tool to use. So you'd have to know the string. So here we can see an example of how to just print the version of a CLI. And the way that's configured, I'll just show you one of these cards. They all look very similar because we do dependency management similarly across all the different tools. You select the repo that you want to execute from. Here's my Maven command. And here are the dependencies. All I need to do is select from the dropdown what's available to me. I select the version and the environment is set up, ready to go. I don't have to think about where to do this, where the string is, how to actually configure this. I'm walked right through it. And then if I want to take a look at an execution, I can go into the summary tab, look at my log. And rather than having a 1,000-line Jenkins log, I have a snippet that just has this, all of the logs that are associated only with this particular part of the pipeline. So I can search for my Maven command. And here's my Maven version. And so you can easily see how we can pull that in through a dependency. Last thing I want to show you is visibility on the pipelines. So I created a dashboard that has all of the different cards that show our operational metrics. So you have deployment frequency. You can see a different view of the deployment frequency. These are all attached to our pipelines. Duration by stage. I can see my statistics of where I'm spending the most time. And then I can pull external tools. I can pull a lot of tools, but we don't have a whole lot of time to demo. So I just wanted to show you one. Here's GitHub showing our recent merge request or pending merge request. We can do this for GitLab. We can do this for Bitbucket. We can pull in Jira tickets. So this is very expandable and everything is card-based, just like the pipelines. So that was a quick high-level demo of some of the benefits based directly on Jenkins. But if you have any more questions, we're all available. We're going to stay after a little bit as well if you have time, but you can also reach out to us and we can have a deeper dive with you individually.
Yeah, I'll basically take a stab at Krishna's question about using GitLab, right? People moving to GitLab and GitHub for the GitOps based model. Again, even if you go with GitLab and GitHub, there is a concept called marketplace. And also you will have to basically write your own YAML script. The problem with the GitLab and GitHub at the enterprise level is how are you going to basically put in the governance, your thresholds, your bringing your new tool integration on top of it, getting the insights out of it. If you look at GitLab and GitHub, yes, that's going to work for, again, because people are moving from 10 years old car to new car. Yes, it will run, but end of the day, what about the safety and security of the car? That needs to be looked upon, especially with the multi-cloud journey that like many enterprises are taking, they will have to understand like what are the security risks, the concerns, the blockers the team is running into, and that option is very limited like with respect to other tools in the market. So that's where like we feel that like we are leading the market in terms of giving you the visibility, because once you have the visibility, it will be easy for you to make a decision on like where you have to invest in terms of be it security or the quality or like any other integration that you're planning to bring in. And also like you can also make sure that like you are following the best practices when it comes to DevOps. Again, like I just want to reiterate, I'm not saying GitLab is not going to work, but measuring in GitLab and measuring in GitHub, it's not available out of the box. And with Opsera no code option, not just for SDLC, be it any technology, any cloud, any stack, SaaS or COTS or SDLC or IAC, all you have to do is drag and drop, build the step, and then build the microservices for the pipeline, and also like configure your collaboration tools or ITSM tools, building your thresholds, and then like offering a secure software supply chain. Opsera is the only tool in the market that's offering right now. Krishna, I hope like I have answered your question, but like Gilbert, like if you want to chime in, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Vishnu and Krishna, for the questions. Appreciate the questions and keep them coming. We really, that's how we learn as a community. We keep asking the questions and we learn and we share our experiences. And we're showing you a little bit about Opsera. We reviewed a little bit about the tool chain automation with Derek providing just a click of a button Jenkins instance. It's managed and updated and everything by us. So think of it as a SaaS offering for best of breed tools for open source community. Declarative pipelines, we have the no code pipelines that you can drag and drop individual cards that allows you to effectively calling the API underneath the hood for plugins, but you don't have to manage the plugins. You don't have to update or delete the plugins or worry about security. That's really what we're decoupling. If you think about it, we're decoupling the dependencies on plugins. And we also support multiple application architectures from an AppSec capability, right? We have the microservices, the monolith, and the COTS applications, and infrastructure as code if you add that. And then from a unified insights, I will give you that whole aggregated contextualized logs and blueprints, what we call, from a whole, view, visibility, global view, if you like. You can connect all of your Jenkins instances that you currently have and look at them from one place, right? Which I don't think there's a tool out there that you have. From previous experience, we had multiple engineering teams running Jenkins systems, and they all ran it with different plugins and different versions because of their own needs. But anyways, I want to give an open discussion. I want to come back to, hey, well, how do we do Jenkins plugins if we don't even use Opsera, right? So a few suggestions that I would have is make sure you have backups. I'll give you an experience. When I was at a company called Aptus, it was a CPQ CLM, contract lifecycle management and configuration price quotation company. We had Jenkins running. We had a lot of them running. But one of our main Jenkins was, had an issue, and we weren't able to back it up. And we spent, I think, 2 or 3, actually, I want to say a week just to get that one Jenkins server back. And it was just painful because we had to rebuild from scratch. And ever since then, it was lesson learned. Infrastructure as code to deploy, Jenkins. Plugins. We had to have a list somewhere to make sure that we maintain plugins, right? Yeah. Maybe Derek, you want to talk about how you would do Jenkins with Jenkins libraries a little bit on how giving kind of some tips on this.
Yeah, so one thing you can do is you can use Jenkins libraries. Jenkins libraries are an application within themselves. So you're going to have a whole development team that's actually going to manage those and maintain those, because that's main code that needs to be maintained. One of the things that I definitely did early on was Dockerize my deployments and make sure that there was a secure image that I had. And the reason for that is when I was a DevOps engineer, Bitcoin mining was very big. And that's just that was one of the vulnerabilities of, if you did not lock down your Jenkins, a lot of CI machines, because they're easy to get to, and a lot of times they're on public IP addresses and they're exposed. If you expose any credentials there, it was an easy place to just run compute and mine for yourself, which is a security risk and a resource hog. We found out because of the performance issues. So definitely recommend having that infrastructure as code, having a backup of what you have as plugins. And the last thing I would say is maintain as much as you can outside of Jenkins. So we had a rule of 70, 20, 10. 70% of our ICD was scripts, 20% was configuration at the pipeline level, and 10%, we tried to keep under 10% at configuration within the tool. So if you can try to keep as much out of the tool and in version control as you can, it makes you highly portable and highly visible.
That's right. Thanks, Derek.
And like one other thing, so a lot of companies, they have open Jenkins, so the internet, and people like try to download an app from the mobile, so like they think that like they can do it like on the move. Please do not do that, because there are more apps in the like Android, especially. Like the moment you give your password, you're basically giving your entire Jenkins account to a third-party people. They're going to hack into your system immediately.
Yeah, thanks, Derek and Vishnu. Yeah, I definitely want to piggyback on what Vishnu said in the past, right? This is a statistic, right? If you leave a public cloud instance with port 22 open to the internet, you will get hacked within the first 24 hours. And you don't have to believe me. Please do not believe me. Please don't believe Derek or Vishnu. Go do your homework. Go Google this. Google is my friend. You know, before Google, we had to. I don't know if you guys have heard this phrase RTFM, right? I don't want to say it here because it might not apply, but that's what I was told when I was a lot, younger, and people would be like, hey, how do I do this? They're like, Gilbert, go RTFM. And I'm like, what is RTFM? So I had to go read it and look it up, but don't believe us. Don't take our word. Go Google this, but it is very real. Please protect yourselves. Please protect your what I call manufacturing code lines, right? It's like building a car. Right. And a lot of the concepts from DevOps came from the car manufacturing industry. Again, you don't have to believe me, but go do some Googling, and you'll see a lot of the books that, the Phoenix project came out of, or, the DevOps for DevOps engineers came out of. Those books are, the research came from the Toyota plant manufacturing. So yeah, that's what I'll end with. But if you are interested in learning a little bit more about how we do no code pipelines and support even the high coders that want to high code, we'll support both, but try us out. All right, so Smita, back to you.
Yeah, thank you guys, and thanks for the questions as well, and for sticking around for extra few minutes. I would like to do the raffle now. The lucky winner is Krishna. I'll look for an email from us from marketing at Opsera. And like we mentioned here, if a lot of you raise your hand about no code pipelines, if you would love to get hands-on with it, we are offering a 1-hour session with our Opsera architects who are usually very busy, and it's for the first 10 signups. So send us an email at marketing@opsera.io. And if you have further questions on this topic, I'm going to put the email addresses for the speakers in the chat. Feel free to reach out to them. And like I mentioned, we do this every 2 weeks, skipping the week of the July 4th. So the next one is on July 12th on Log4j and how to the shift left principles and how to bake in security and how to be prepared for a next vulnerability, and even for Log4j in the future. So stay tuned for more topics and let us know what topics you're interested in. To register for the next topic, here is the URL, go.opsera.io/log4j. It's on July 12th at 10 a.m. And yeah, Vishnu, if you want to say anything about the 1-hour session, I'm going to give your email addresses in the chat in the meanwhile.
Sure. So this 1-hour session, like what we're going to do is like first 15 minutes, we will walk you through like how Opsera is being set up. And like we will give you like user accounts for you to play around with your own pipelines. And 15 minutes, you can build your pipeline with respect to build quality, security, thresholds with threat vulnerability management. And you can execute the pipeline, and like we can walk you through or like how the console log has to be read. And the last 15 minutes, we can take any feedbacks, question, and also like you will be able to see what you have executed part of the pipeline with respect to the unified insight. So it's kind of a POV. You are trying it out on a product where like in 15 minutes, you're gonna like experience the entire DevOps journey.
All right. Thank you. Thanks again for joining. We'll see you again in the next huddle.